Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow the honourable gentleman from Moyle Valley and so many eloquent speeches today from the front benches of the government, Her Majesty's opposition, and indeed the SNP. And I wanted to mention that because the SNP spokesman spoke about port communities, and I wish to concentrate some of my contribution on the port communities. As has been said, the Great War of World War I impacted on every community in our country. Every town, village and city was affected. One community that was very badly affected were seafaring communities. The seafaring community that I'm proud to represent, like many others, had service personnel on the battlefields, but also they guarded our trade links, which carried people, goods and indeed service personnel during the Great War and indeed in subsequent wars. I want to concentrate my contribution on the greatest loss of life in the Irish Sea during the Great War. On October the 10th, 1918, the Royal Mail ship Leinster left Dunleary, which was then Kingstown, carrying His Royal Highness's mail, Royal Mail, from Dunleary to Holyhead. It was at Holyhead in my constituency. It was sunk just a few yards from the port of Dunleary. On board and those that perished, were children, crew members and indeed service personnel from the Commonwealth, from New Zealand, from Australia, from Canada and indeed from the United States of America. That vessel, as I said, was doing its normal duty of moving people across the Irish Sea, but also the Royal Mail. The 500 who died, many of them had been just carrying out their normal duties. They were seafarers. They were given exemption to going to war because of the essential duties that they did, keeping our sea link open. The tragedy unites the Irish community and the British community and the Welsh community. And I'm proud today to wear poppies from Ireland and poppies from Wales, because we had on October the 10th in Ireland and in Wales a special commemoration to the loss of those 500. And I met their families, the loss of families, and it's right that members in this House today have talked about the survivors and the families of the survivors as well, because they have had their communities and their families have been scarred by the Great War. It was a tragedy. Yes, I'll give way briefly.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way on that point. Of course, like my honourable friend, you've got communities in Coventry made contributions to the Great War as well, and as you will know and the House will know, Coventry suffered in 2 world wars, after bombing in the Second World War. So people in Coventry do share sympathy with what my honourable friend has been saying about the sacrifices being made.
I do certainly know a lot about Coventry. My son-in-law comes from Coventry, as he knows. I think he was his MP for some time, so I do know the Coventry. But my concentration is on the families of the seafaring communities. And I welcome the MP for Broadland mentioning the fact that many were lost at sea and their bodies were never recovered and they never had proper funerals to honour them. Talking about the family and the loss, and lots of members, quite rightly, and I'm sure other members speaking will talk about their personal experiences of their families. I wanted to outline my grandmother, who was born in 1888. She, during the Second World War, a single parent who had lost her husband to disease, became a nurse. And she worked in the convalescent home at the port of Holyhead during the Great War. And many people came to her who were, as has been said, had shell shock, severe shell shock, including her own youngest brother. For 2 years, her youngest brother never recognised her for the trauma that he had suffered on the battlefields. And I think it is worth bearing in mind that many mothers and many family members had that experience as well. The other stark memory that I'm sure we've all seen when we see war graves of the First World War is the age of those that died. Many of them, and I don't know the exact figure, but the average age, they were in their 20s. Young men and boys who suffered. And the parents of those will never have forgotten that in the times in their lives as they do it. My grandmother, as I said, her son, my father, served in the Second World War, and she always told me that every day that he was away was a dark day until they returned home safely. So we are right, as a House of Commons, to come 100 years after the guns fell silent, to remember our communities, to remember those who sailed across the Irish Sea, those who sailed around the coastline. The RMS Leinster reminded me that vulnerable people who were shot by U-boats, that they went to sea. Going to sea, and I speak as an ex-merchant seafarer who worked on that route, is dangerous enough. You look after each other on the crew. But when you're faced with the potential of a U-boat sinking you, and that's what happened to the RMS Leinster, cruelly, as it was doing that. That's the irony of that story that I wanted to share with the House of Commons, is that the German submarine U-boat 123 was actually itself shot and blown up as it went back to Bremenhaven over the north coast of Britain. Yes, my right honourable friend on the front bench is right. We must respect the bravery of our opponents as well, because they carried out their duties. And it's hugely appropriate, and I give credit to the government on this, that the German president is attending ceremonies this year, because we want to look forward. We want to look forward as a nation, but it's right that 100 years... We made that pledge, and our forefathers made that pledge in 1918, that we would remember them. We're honouring that pledge today, as we have done any years, and I'm proud, and I will be proud, to stand as an ex-seafarer representing a proud seafaring community on the 11th of November to say to all those people and all their families that we will remember them. We will remember.
Marie Tremblant.